So, part 2 of rebuilding my fork legs. Apologies for the narration, but I haven't got the effort to write a script this time. As I covered in the update video, from the forum I managed to get hold of 2 other fork legs. I'm using the left-hand one that I've obtained. The internals look a lot better than the left-hand one that I have. I've used a dial gauge to measure the fork leg clearance, and it's about similar to the good right leg that I had, so possibly about, I don't know, 0.01 of a millimetre. Can't find anything on the internet to tell me what the clearance should be, but this seems to be acceptable to me now, particularly once the seals are fitted. Both damper rod assemblies needed a good clean. You'll have seen in the part 1 video where I put them in Evaporust to kill the rust, and now here I am wire brushing and then cleaning all the rust off all the different parts. One damper rod doesn't look too bad, not much rust on it, it's cleaned up okay. The other damper rod though has a lot of rust pitting in it, some of the pitting is quite deep, so I'm just going to use some chemical metal to fill that to smooth out the imperfections. Slathering on a lot of chemical metal just to make sure I get it into all of the pitting, so I don't have to put a second coat on. I think I left it a day or 2 before I started sanding it down to make sure it had fully hardened. And then I've used different grades to slowly sand it down until it's a smooth finish. Careful not to go past the metal. And here it is finished sanded. It looks a bit lumpy still, but it's smooth to the finger, and I don't think there's any load on it, it's just a sliding surface. So once the oil is in the forks, it ought to be fine. Now to reproduce the stickers. I've scanned one in, put it in my graphics program. I've used that to reproduce the different parts of the sticker, and then I've put them together so I've got the white on a black background. I can't print white, I've only got an inkjet printer, so I've invested in some white vinyl sticker paper which I've printed onto. Here are the finished stickers, so I'm cutting them to size. Although it's a black from the inkjet, it's not quite black. There's a bit of a grey to it, so they're not ideal when they're finished, but they will do for me. I've measured off my photo to get the spacing right for where the sticker was. And then I'm using some masking tape just to get the alignment right. And then putting the stickers on. A clean handkerchief so that I can wipe the sticker on, get rid of any air bubbles, although actually the vinyl was a bit thicker than I'm used to in the past, so no air bubbles applied. Okay. In order to seal the stickers onto the fork legs and to give a better finish for the gloss black, I've applied some clear lacquer to the fork legs. The stickers look a little bit orange in this, but that's just the lighting. The next job is to remake some parts of the fork tops. As far as I can tell, there should be a grub screw, a spring, a ball bearing and an O-ring. One fork top had that in, the other had bits missing, so I'm having to remake a grub screw and a spring. So I'll start by cutting a slot for the screwdriver to fit in. Then I'm going to cut it to length. But now I need to file the end smooth. I've got it held in a nut against another bolt so it won't rotate. Here we have the final parts ready for assembling in the fork gap. I assume this is some sort of spring-loaded mechanism, so if the air pressure builds up too high in the forks, the spring will release it. In order to fit the oil seals in the fork legs, I've made a drawbar so I can use the screw at the bottom of the fork leg and a nut at the top of this threaded rod to pull the fork seals into place. So I've got a nut pushing down on a socket to push the seals in. I've ended up using 2 seals like the original fork legs. I foolishly didn't reread the forum comments about using, is it an Ariete seal which has 2 lips, so I could have got away with 1 seal and a spacer. There we go, live and learn. And then from eBay I found a couple of Yamaha fork clips to retain the oil seals in place, as only one of my fork legs had the clip in it. And now it's time for reassembly. There's a circlip, holds the piston on the damper rod, and then the other components just slide over it. And this is the order I've ended up with for the components. I studied my video very carefully to look at it. I stupidly forgot to take notes of the order. If you know differently, please let me know. And the damper rod fits in against a shoulder in the stanchion and is retained in place by an internal circlip. just using the screwdriver to make sure the circlip is properly fitted. Otherwise I've got visions of me doing a wheelie and the fork dampers pulling out of the stanchions so the wheel falls off. In goes the fork spring, the spacer tube, and then on goes the fork cap. This holds the whole assembly under compression. On disassembly, the bottom screw and the drain screw both seem to have aluminium washers, which are very distorted, so what I've done is replace them with some copper washers. Once the leg was fitted on, I just needed to use a screwdriver to line up the damper rod hole with the bottom of the fork leg so I could get the retaining screw in. And again, thanks to the forum, it's 160 cc's of fork oil. Most owners seem to use 10 weight. I've used 5 because that's what I've got. If it's too soft, I'll change it later. It could be the weight of oil I've used, but there doesn't seem to be much damping. But I won't know until I finally get it on the road and ride it. And for the moment I've put them back in the yokes so that they're safe out of the way. I'll have to pack them away when I finally paint the frame. And there we go. Front suspension rebuilt and working clean with new stanchions.